We've all seen those Zero2Hero challenges. The one where you take a character from 0 score to Keystone Hero. Well, this one's a little different. Firstly, I am someone who enjoys speed leveling. I've done it many times, and if you are interested, I have a few of my speed leveling videos linked in the description. When I first looked at the Zero2Hero challenge, I thought unlimited time to hit 2500 Mythic Plus score seemed too simple, so I imposed a time limit. When I previously tried this challenge, once in Shadowlands, I spent about 90 hours on an Alliance character. This time, I would have 2 to 3 resets to hit max level and 2500 score. I've never played Horde, so I also decided to go Horde for an extra challenge. So here is my rule set. It must be a fresh character on a new server. I'm not allowed to trade gold or items from any of my other characters. All keys must be pugged, and I must complete the challenge within 14 days of starting. So with that, I chose the realm Doomhammer and created a troll druid called Roguery Bear. It is August 5th. I make my druid and select the Exile's Reach intro scenario. The reason I chose Exile's Reach was to experience the Horde side of the zone, and the different voice acting. It is a great experience, I highly recommend it to anyone. Starting off, I relearned how to play the game and complained about not having edit mode available. Why is edit mode not available from the beginning? It makes zero sense. Once I land on the island, I just follow the quest chain and collect all the treasures I can find. Leaving Exile's Reach, I'm a little over 10, have picked Feral specialization, and it has taken me around 40 minutes to complete. Once in Orgrimmar, I misclick the option and annoyingly have to complete a small daisy chain quest, sending me to Zandalar in order to gain access to edit mode. Now that I have access to edit mode, I play around with my UI for way too long. I then decide I want to level in Horde zones and set my chromie time to Cataclysm. I then head off to the Barrens. Now, I've never quested in the Barrens before, and all I can say is, this zone sucks. It's a super big zone with awful objectives that take a really long time. And on top of that, there are random alliance camps with high levels that one-shot you. One of these camps was my first death and my second death. While questing, I decided to queue for a few dungeons after being told the gold rewards are pretty good and the blue items you get from the bag are also pretty good. I managed to complete the Stockade, Razorfang Crawl, Ragefire Chasm and a Wing of Diamond all with the same group. After this, I'm almost level 20 in just over 2 hours of game time. I decided to switch from Feral to Guardian spec and started to queue for dungeons while I quest. I get into a Black Fathom Depths and after completing everything, I am level 22. I go back to Orgrimmar and look at what I have available to me. I tried to sell a few greens I have found on the auction house to see if I hit the jackpot, as 1,000 extra gold would be huge at this point. I have 307 gold, so decide some bigger bags would be a really good first purchase. I find some Wildercloth bags for just under 16 gold each, and accidentally buy 5 due to a misclick. It's going to feel a lot better to have 148 slots instead of the tiny amount I had previously. Once I've picked everything up, I re-queue for dungeons and head back to the Barrens to continue questing. While flying over, I managed to get a queue pop for the Scarlet Monastery Graveguard. The dungeon goes fine, but I forget to complete the quests and miss out on a little bit of experience. The same group goes again and we get Dire Maul Woodwood Quarter. The dungeon confuses the group massively and we run around lost for what feels like an eternity. I return to the Barrens after finally finishing and just continue my questing journey. It's at this point I realise that it's ticked over to the 6th of August on the server time, which means Darkmoon Fair is active. I quickly Hearthstone to Orgrimmar and go to get the 10% XP buff. I queue for one last dungeon of the night and hit Razorfang Downs, which goes super smooth. Although I forget to hand in the quests again. I'm super excited to have the 10% XP buff and start questing, but managed to quickly lose it to one of the annoying Alliance camps. To finish off my night, I complete all the quests in Southern Barrens and receive the achievement, as well as hitting level 28. At the end of day 1, I thought I would have actually made more progress, and I am starting to question whether my choice of leveling Horde was the best one. Day 2, Tuesday 8th. I log in and immediately go to the mailbox as I have mail waiting, and I'd only sold one item worth 2 gold. I take the rest of the items and vendor them, thinking that they are going to take way too long to sell. I also need to select a new zone, so after a little thought, I go for Tanneris. I jump on the flight path down. I decide to queue for a dungeon and get an insta-queue as tank for Gnomrigan. It's a super smooth run, but I again forget to hand in the quests. Once in Tanneris, I start questing and complete the first part of the achievement. I am much happier in this zone than the Barrens. It feels a lot better, quests are a lot more grouped together, and objectives are a lot nicer. I queue for another dungeon and manage to get to Dead Mines, which is again super smooth, and as a bonus, I don't forget to hand in the quests, which altogether made me hit level 31, which now means I have access to flying. I decide to queue for one last dungeon and end up in a freehold, which has no quests, which is a little bit disappointing. Once I'm done, I finish off Tanneris, which leaves me at level 39. One level off being able to use fast flying. I decide to fly off to Thunderbluff and pick up the Darkmoon Fair buff because I had forgotten about it until now. Once I had picked up the buff, I fly back to Orgrimmar and start the Warlords of Draenor intro. I have done this scenario a lot, so I managed to clear it in 20 minutes and hit level 43. Now with fast flying, I feel like the leveling gets kicked into a way faster pace. Especially with the Warlord zones, they're super efficient. The quests give more experience than Dragonflight quests, which again makes no sense. I decide to just follow the Frostfire Ridge questline, as it seems way faster than queuing for dungeons at this point. I managed to hit level 50 within an hour of starting the zone. I finished questing for a bit and closed out the night with 9.5 hours on the clock and almost level 52. I log in on Wednesday 9th and decide I'm a bit bored of Frostfire Ridge and head over to Gorgrond. This is a zone I know quite well, having completed it several times on the Alliance side, and did not expect that much to be different. I was correct, and the only difference is where the quest hubs are located, meaning I breeze through the zone and gain the 8 levels I need to hit level 60 in 1.5 hours. I return to Orgrimmar and clear my quest log, and start the intro to Dragonflight questline. For Dragonflight leveling content, I have a plan. I completed the intro quests to start the Threads of Fate and selected Thaldraszus. Before flying off to start the Thaldraszus campaign quest, I complete the Dragonflying World quest in the Waking Shore. This is because the bags reward at least 500 gold and are super quick to complete. Also before going to Thaldraszus, I go to the Fields of Ferocity in Orharan Plains. Firstly, because the quest chain awards are a very nice weapon at the end, which will be nice for leveling. Secondly, it opens the world quest, which can award several rewards, 2 of which would be good for me. 1,000 gold or a satchel of flight stones. There were other people there doing the world quest, so I just solo start the bosses, and since I'm a tank I can complete them slowly by myself. But people were helping me, so it went pretty fast. Once done, I complete the Dragonflying World quest in Orharan Plains, Azure Span, and finally Thaldraszus. I noticed the time rift is up and wonder if it's worth doing for experience. It turns out it's not. However, I did get 2 items that made it 100% worthwhile. The first is an encapsulated destiny. This grants a guaranteed reward on your next time rift. Second, and by far the most important, was a dilated time capsule, which can be traded for a 402 item of any slot. This item can be catalyzed into tier. I then go to Valdrakken, start the campaign for Thaldraszus, and pick up the weekly rep quest. I then follow my usual leveling route and do the Serene Dream Spa and Gardens of Unity questline. Continue the campaign up until I return to Alexstrasza. While doing this, I'm also killing any rares that I can find. I then decide to go to the Azure Span and start the campaign there. In this zone, I do pretty much every quest I can find. While completing the Riders in the Snow quest, I got distracted by the Fyrax Fury event being up and find out that the big quest rewards more than 70,000 experience, which is huge. I also get some nice 402 wrists and a 392 trinket ready for level 70. I continue with the campaign and decide to call it a night after meeting Brenna. At this point, I am level 65, have 15,000 gold, and set on about 14 hours playtime. Log in on Saturday the 12th. I continue completing the quests and the campaign in the Azure span. It takes me around an hour to finish all the quests in the Ascara area. I stop the campaign at this point as it feels really inefficient. I still need 2 more levels and decide to find out how much experience a dungeon gives. I queue into an alderman. It's a super easy run, lots of chain pulling, and we even use a rogue to skip trash. Meaning the dungeon only took around 13 minutes to clear. With the dungeon quests, it's around a third of a level. I'm unsure if this is good and wanted to test it a little more. So I re-queue and get into a Nukud. It takes me about 20 minutes to clear as there were quite a few deaths, including a full wipe on the last boss. When I was done with this, I realised that the Dragonfly world quests have reset and I can go complete them in each zone for 2000 gold. So I start in Azure Span, then head to Thaldraszus, Waking Shore, and then end in Haharan Plains. Queue for one final dungeon while doing these and hit Azure Vaults, the jackpot in terms of fast dungeons. It still takes around 13 minutes due to someone leaving, but I managed to hit level 69 by the end. I feel like dungeons are taking a really long time and just wanted to finish off questing, so I pick Haharan Plains and start the campaign. I complete all the side quests in the first area and carry on with the campaign up until I am sent to Terrakai. This leaves me 10% short of level 70. Do the Cataloger's World quest and the Wanted quest in Terrakai. Despite it being a group quest, it's super easy soloable as a bear. This is enough for me to hit max level with a playtime of 18 hours. It took a little longer than I thought it would, compared to other times I've speedrun on the Alliance side, but I am there and can start earning score. I return to Valdrakken, equipped all my best gear, and have an eye level with 303. I notice there is a time rift with 1 minute left. I fly down, jump in the portal, and use my encapsulated destiny to guarantee a reward. It rolls Azamorn, which means fighting the Lich King. I almost immediately died to Remorseless Winter. Managed to res, only to die immediately to the same thing. I came up with a plan to deal with him, and it's successful for a while, managing to get him down to about 50%, but eventually getting overwhelmed by the Valkyrie. After a few more attempts, most of the people leave and I decide to follow them, giving up on the loot for now. Turning to Valdrakken, I hand in the weekly rep quest. This rewards me with a 376 weapon. I then decide to vendor all my trash and greens and end up with 21,500 gold. I know there are some greens I can buy off the AH, so I buy 376 gloves for 100 gold and 376 shoulders for 1000 gold. I also find a 312 belt in my mailbox. All these new upgrades, I'm sitting on 345 eye level. I do a quick scout on the map for world quests that might have gear upgrades. One has a helm that is 376, which is 50 eye levels higher than my current one, and another grants a trinket. I decide to do the helm first in case the trinket becomes a higher eye level, as trinkets are generally harder to find. It was still only 376, but a significant upgrade over my 316. I contemplate getting the amulet from the Forbidden Reach, however I decide against it. In hindsight, it was probably worth going to get it, as the eye level bump is very nice, and the effects are pretty strong in lesser gear. I decide to check the Primalist Future for a chance at the Ringbound Hourglass recipe, but it's not up. During this time, I come up with a plan. I go and do a few things in Zaralek Cavern, pick up their weekly rep quest. I missed the Researchers Under Fire event, which would have been a nice rep boost. I do the Dragonfly world quest and a few other world quests instead. I finish with 675 out of 1500 rep for Laum. Then fly back up and start doing the Time Rift, hoping this time it's enough people to be able to complete the final boss. We get Azeroth and the Illidan boss, who is much easier than the Lich King. This is where the stars aligned and I got a second dilated time capsule and a mount. However, did not notice getting the time capsule. During this time, I had managed to attain a Shadowflame crest and wondered how much it would cost to get the mats for an embellished item. Altogether, the mats cost around 6,000 gold. I place a public order with 1,000 gold commission. I felt 7,000 gold for a 424 took a big chunk out of my gold, having only 16,000 gold left. But if they get crafted, they are a huge upgrade. While doing this, I noticed I had my second time capsule and make the decision to get a 2 set. I choose the legs and the chest, as these have the most stats. With 2 set under my belt, I thought I would be strong enough to start doing keys. I list my +2 Vortex Pinnacle. I fill up the group and start my first key. The first thing I noticed was that threat may be a bit of an issue. But with only the fortified affix, the key goes super smooth despite a few mobs getting away from me. We managed to +3 and my key gets upgraded to a +5 underrot. Contemplate upgrading my gear, but realised that flight stones are going to limit me, so I decided to save them for now. I see the time rift is up in 16 minutes and wanted to try for a 3rd tier slot. I do a world quest in Azure Span that grants 1000 gold, and then go back to the auction house and buy the toxified armor patch for 5000 gold, ready for my next crafted item. I head down to the time rift, but get nothing worthwhile. In this time my belt gets crafted and I'm currently eye level 371. I feel like I can easily tank a +5. I list my key and fill the group after about 5 minutes. We had a few deaths around the last 2 bosses, but managed to +2 the key anyway. This gives me a +7 halls of infusion. I again list my key and fill the group super fast. We managed to finish it with only a single death and a +2. Even if I did miss a bit of trash and we had to go back. I also get some 411 shoulders, which are a nice upgrade over the ones I got from the AH. At this point, I had 277 score. Key becomes a +9 freehold, which I immediately queue up and start forming a group. Someone with 441 eye level signs up, but I choose not to invite them since they are significantly higher eye level and it would feel a bit like a boost. This dungeon hurt. The crushers were hitting me for 50 to 60% of my health, but we managed to clear with only 2 deaths despite the few mishaps with me not being in Bethel. Did not get any loot from the dungeon, however, I got a second splintered spark of Shadow Flame, meaning I could craft a second item. I go to the auction house and buy the mats to craft a belt, which I could put the toxified armor patch on that I got earlier. It cost me around 2000 gold in materials and I put up a 500 gold commission. I call it a night with 410 score, having made good progress. I usually raid on Sundays, but since people were on holiday, we actually cancelled on Sunday the 13th. This meant I could continue my challenge. So I log in and notice I have Mal. It's my belt which I put an order up for last night. This should be a significant bump in damage, despite doubling the negative effect on the boots. Starting this session, I'm at 22 hours played and have an eye level of 379. I put my key up, a +11 underrot, and fill the group super fast. We have 2 deaths on the first pack of trash, which worries me a little. We however managed to clear it and even +2 despite the 10 deaths by the end of the key. I get a +13 Brackenhide, a key I have not done, so I decide to try it, fill up the group and head in. I was expecting to struggle in here, but Ursoc's Fury just keeps me super healthy, and I'm starting to feel confident enough to help with the afflicted affix. The dungeon is super clean and we managed to +2 the key without a single death. I get an amulet, which is a significant upgrade. I look at crafting a trinket as mine is holding me back. I notice that it requires a fiery soul, which would mean buying a Zap Throttle soul inhaler, and these are almost 9000 gold, so I decide against the trinket. My key rolled to a +15 freehold. In my opinion, freehold is the hardest dungeon to tank. A 15 at my eye level might be a little bit rough. I decide what's the worst that can happen and give it a go. I listed it and find 4 people. The first triple pull is really rough. I dropped below 50% several times. This continues through the whole dungeon. A miss pull between the second and third boss gives me a super rough time. The crushes are super nasty, hitting me for 70+% of my health per hit. We have a few more deaths, ending at 18 for the whole key. We do finish it a little over time. I get braces from the chest, which are a small upgrade over my 402s. I decide to take a small break from the keys and want to grab the missing rep from the Laum and craft a ring. I do the dig event in Laum, which gives me a nice weapon upgrade. After doing a few quests, I complete the weekly rep quest. It rewards me with an identical weapon and a spark of Shadow Fang. This lets me go and craft my ring. The materials cost me around 200 gold, so it turns out to be a super cheap craft. I put up a 500 gold commission and start queuing my +14 Vortex Pinnacle. While looking for a healer, my ring gets crafted at 425. This pushes my eye level to 403. I buy a gem for the ring, this costs 500 gold. I also spent around 1500 gold to enchant all of my gear. I get into the Vortex Pinnacle and the key was a bit of a struggle. We had a lot of deaths and end up running overtime, but I do still get some score. I list my plus 13, which is a Neltharis. I try a big pull at the start, but with a few missed interrupts, we wipe and everyone leaves. I go again and queue the 12. This goes really well and we manage to 2-chest, only struggling a little bit on the last boss. I get a lucky reroll on the key and get an Alderman 14, one of the 2 that I'm missing. It takes a long time to find a healer, but once filled, we jump in and after a couple of deaths at the start, we blast through it and +2 the key. I get a new weapon and roll Neltharian's Lair, the last key I am missing for score. I decide I want to end on the high and queue up my plus 16. I found 4 people, one of which was an Orgvoker, and oh my god, how strong Orgvoker made me feel. My health was so solid for this whole run, I even mistakenly tanked the avoidable cleave on the first boss. With no major mistakes for the whole run, we 2-chest and I get a plus 18 freehold. But it was time to call it a night with 1,396 score and an eye level of 409. Tuesday 15th, the day before reset. It's my 6th day of playing, but the 11th day of the challenge. Today is the last day for me to gain any fortified score. With an 18 freehold in my pocket, I form a group and step back into the dungeon that has felt so much harder than the rest. It starts off pretty smooth, only having a few deaths to shattering below combos. I try a very aggressive pull after the first boss, purely because I didn't want to wait for the patrol to move. This results in 3 deaths. We carry on and get a clean second boss with 0 mistakes. I again get impatient and pull a pack with a crusher. The healer gets pulled into the crusher slam, one-shotting them. As we head towards the 3rd boss, we accidentally pull a second pack of trash, which I don't have the cooldowns to survive. I die and start running back. We managed to finish both trash packs with only 3 deaths. On the 3rd boss, I felt so sorry for our healer. I shifted out of bear form at the exact same point I shifted out of bear form on day 4. The healer also got stuck with all of the sharks because the warlocks that we had kept teleporting away. Seven and a half minutes left on the timer. We use a warlock gateway to skip a large chunk of the trash. While clearing the pack, the healer falls down and dies to the pack we skipped. She uses Mind Soothe to avoid the trash on the way back, but accidentally pulls one of the skipped packs. I kite the pack and we come out pretty clean with 0 deaths. I immediately pull the boss with 3 minutes left on the timer. We lose the healer at the end of the fight, but manage to time it with just over 1 minute on the timer. And I get a 19 halls of infusion. Before doing this challenge, I quite liked halls of infusion. Now, I hate the place. My first foray was a plus 7. Now I'm attempting a plus 19. I fill up the group and start the key. I do the big double pull at the start and it goes surprisingly well. I feel super tanky, but then I accidentally shapeshift again out of bear form and die. We recover and clear the rest of the trash with no hassle, all the way to the first boss, and it goes well. We carry on all the way through and clear the second boss, with only a few deaths to missed interrupts. This is where things go horribly wrong. The dragons have a breath, which I severely underestimate. Even with a bit of planning, they were still too much, and after a few wipes, the group falls apart. I can't blame them. My gear was broken at the end. I had died that much. I was an embarrassment in this key. I decide to try and do the time rift to see if I can get another tier piece, but that doesn't happen. After some contemplation, I decide to drop my halls of infusion to a 17 to try and ensure a clear. The group blasts through and we 2-chest it. I get a 19 Alderman and a 428 Iridius fragment. It's not the best trinket for bear, but it's a significant eye level boost. Due to Alderman already being one of my higher keys, I used the Dungeon Finder for the first time. I get invited to a plus 16 Underrock. The group is particularly strong, meaning we managed to 3-chest. It was now pretty late on Tuesday and I realised I can only fit in one more key before calling it a night. I decide I want to do a Neltharis as it is by far the easiest key. I start looking for keys, trying to get invited to anything that's plus 16 or higher. After 30 minutes, I get invited to a plus 19. I get super excited, go and grab flasks and food off the AH ready for the run. The healer then inspects me and complains and leaves the group. I spend a bit time applying to other groups with no luck and settle on a plus 14, which has a couple of overgeared people. We zoom through it and manage a plus 2. This was my last key of Fortified, leaving me with 1,653 score, an eye level of 415 and a little over 8,000 gold. Wednesday the 16th. It's my 7th day of playing and it's vault day. I log in and check the vault. I'm really hoping to get helm or gloves to convert into tier. First option is lingering spore pods, a trinket on myth track. Second is braces, also on myth track. And my final option is a helm on hero track. I instantly snap up the helm as the trinket is pretty poor and I already have decent braces. I go straight to the catalyst and get my last piece for 4 set. Also receive an undrop plus 18, which is a great key to start off the session. I list it, fill the group fairly quickly and start the key. With 4 set, Bear feels rock solid. We zoom through until the mushroom boss where we manage to lose a couple of people. We still manage and finish the key in time, even with the last boss also getting a little sketchy at the end. I get a freehold plus 19. Regardless of if I time it, it will be a huge bump in score. I list it, fill the group and set off. The run starts off brilliant, clearing the first boss with no issue. We have a few deaths on the trash, but things feel fine. After the third boss, we have a little over 8 minutes left. It's a little bit tight, but everything goes fine and we manage to clear the key. I also get some 431 direct upgrade braces. I also get my first plus 20 key, a Halls of Infusion. Without any hesitation, I list the key and fill the group. My eye level at this point is 418. We kill the first boss with only 1 death, and on the way to the next boss we have 1 more death, but things feel smooth. Then we meet my arch nemesis of this run. Tyrannical Gulping Goliath is a nightmare. We lose random people all the time and eventually wipe. Quickly run back and go again. We have heroism for the pool, so I hope to nuke it quickly before it becomes a problem. But it doesn't work out, and we get another wipe. One last run back and the attempt ends super quick and the group falls apart and disbands. I relist the 19 and actually managed to get past the frog. Barely. Only to wipe on the next boss due to a few mistakes resulting in someone leaving. The group disbands and I relist the 18. Maybe third attempt will be the charm. The run starts amazing up to the second boss where I fear issues. But it goes surprisingly well with only a single death and we have a combat res. While on the trash to the third boss, an argument broke out between the paladin healer and shadow priest. Something about dude mass dispel. The priest spends the first 10 seconds of the boss fight typing to the paladin and then stands in the frontal because they are again typing. With a little struggle we manage to clear the boss after I chuck out a few of my regrowth procs to help the healer. With 1 boss left, I just need to get through this and I'll be happy. We get to the pack before the mini boss and the priest stands in a tornado, dies and leaves. Thankfully the other 3 stay and continue the key with me. We have more than 5 minutes on the timer, so there is a possibility to still time the key. We start the fight and lose the healer early on, but we get a res off and carry on. We get a second submerge phase, clear it with just under 2 minutes on the timer and 30% on the boss. At this point I know if we get a third submerge, it's out of time. On 1%, the boss submerges, sealing the overtime. On a positive note, I do get a very nice hero track ring and a plus 17 alderman key. I find a group for my alderman key which has a little bit lower geared people, making the run a little bit tight with only 10 seconds left on the timer, but a clear is a clear. I get a freehold which is already by far my strongest key, so I start queuing for keys and get into a plus 17 Brackenhide. The run has 0 deaths leading to a plus 2. I also get rewarded with a pair of gloves with really good stats, which were also one of my weakest slots. I have one more key left in me for the night and get into a Vortex Pinnacle plus 17. This key is a struggle. The mechanics are just a little much for the group, and we have 7 deaths before the first boss is down. We get to the second boss without another major wipe, but lose 4 people on the boss. And despite me being able to solo it, I wipe it up and we try again. We kill the boss with only 1 more death, but the timer has already run out, and we have trash and a boss to go. At this point, I should have probably left the key and looked for something else, if I was being efficient and thinking about the challenge. But I don't really like to leave keys, so I stick around, finish the run, so that they have a plus 17 on their weekly. And after 2 wipes on the last boss, we kill it significantly over time, so no score. I call it a night with 2,114 score and 424 eye level. Thursday the 17th, and I have tonight and tomorrow left of my 2 weeks. Less than 400 score to go. A raid on Thursdays, but as I had such a short time left, I decided to try a few keys after the raid finished. I started queuing for plus 18s, the ones that I am missing. I get into a Neltharian's lair, plus 18. This run was going fairly well, with only a few deaths here and there. When we get to Neuraxis, it is clear the healer is struggling with the healing requirement, but we managed to kill it with only 2 deaths. With 11 minutes left on the timer, I'm thinking it should be easy to time the key, since we only have a few trash packs and the last boss. It starts off fine, however the positioning causes the crystals to be really far. We managed the first cycle, but with the bad spikes continuing and the stressy movement I have to do, it makes me mess up on the boss and I end up dying. This causes a wipe, so we run back and pull the boss with a little under 3 minutes. This point, I think there is still a chance to time it. We do 2 phases perfectly. The range stand nice and close and make it so much easier. We get a 3rd magma wave phase with 9 seconds left and the boss on 1%. I decide to hide and the range managed to finish it off within the timer. I gain 88 score, leaving me at 2,202. Since it's pretty late, I decide to end on the high note, thinking it was good. I got one done and feeling confident I can get my last 300 score tomorrow. Friday 18th. It's the final day of the challenge. I log in early as I have my guild's dungeon night in the evening and I also want to play the new Path of Exile League. 300 score and around 4 hours to gain it. I still have 2 dungeons I have 0 score for, so I start queuing for those on 18 plus and get into a 19 Neltharis. It goes pretty smooth up until the second boss, at which point a few mistakes happens and somebody disconnects. The group falls apart. I get into a plus 18 Vortex Pinnacle instead, the other key I need, and with only 1 death we manage an easy clear. I re-roll my freehold and get a Vortex Pinnacle, of course. With only Neltharis on 0 score, I queue for all the Neltharis keys available between 18 and 20. I get into an 18 and it takes a while to find a healer. And while waiting, I upgrade a few items and end up with an eye level of 425. Eventually we get a healer and start the key. While clearing, I notice the DK whose key it is has very low DPS and seems to not understand why he keeps dying. I tried to talk him through it and we managed to get to the last boss, but it's too much. And after a wipe on the last boss, the healer leaves. Back to queuing for Neltharis. I get into a new plus 18. This time it's a really strong group. We do some really good chain pulls and the bosses just fall over. We 2 chest and the Moon King gives me a huge cloak upgrade. With no keys uncompleted, I have 2,423 score. I had time for 1, maybe 2 more keys before I was going to eat some dinner. But since I didn't really have time after dinner, it would be it. The end of the 14-day challenge. I need at least 120. So I start queuing and after a lot of rejection, I get into a plus 20 alderman. I get into the instance, start eating and flask. The paladin turns to me. I get really nervous thinking they're going to kick me. Thankfully, we start the key. I start with Bromax so we can hero him. We lose one person, but we res, and it's all good. I head over to the dwarves, and we clear those with another death. We have not got heroism back for the third boss, so she lives for a while, and we lose a few people, but it dies. We get everyone back up and head on. We lose one more person on the trash to the next boss, and accidentally pull the next boss before the healer gets to sit down and get their mana back. But we manage with only a single death. The time is running low with only 7 minutes left, and I'm doubtful we can time it, but we could definitely get score. A mispull, doing the skip at the very end of the dungeon, causes the timer to overrun before we even pull the last boss. On the last boss, I'm throwing out regrowths to help the healer and really do my best to try and help keep everyone alive. We lose the hunter, but manage to kill the boss. I needed 77 score. The pop-up comes up, plus 22 score, putting me at 2,445. This point, I don't have time for another key, unless I change my evening round. And even then, I predict I'd need 2, probably even 3 plus 20s to be able to hit 2,500. I'd decide to go eat, and end the challenge with 1 day, 21 hours, playtime. 55 score to go. Do the guild's dungeon night, and then play Path of Exile all night. This Zero2Hero run was significantly more difficult than my first attempt in Shadowlands, and there were definitely mistakes in the run or ways I made things more difficult for myself, perhaps without any good reason. For example, I could have leveled a lot faster if I'd just gone Alliance, giving me way more time at level 70. I also think I should have pushed myself to do more in the Fortified week. Just doing one more dungeon could have made up for the stuff I was missing in the Tyrannical week. Having 2 bad keys, an untimed 14 and a 2-chested 13, just pulled my score right down. If one of those keys had been higher, it would have been so much easier. However, what I did do right was my class choice and role choice. Trying to do this as DPS would have been a lot harder, and with the time restriction, it would have been impossible. But with tanks being somewhat sought after, it meant people took a chance and invited me despite the lower eye level. On top of that, playing Bear. Bear is an extremely strong place. I think it would have been possible to pick a different tank class, but it would have been significantly harder to survive and finish keys on time, and probably even to be picked up by groups. Throughout the challenge, I was confident that I could manage the 2,500 within the 14-day time frame without playing every single day. On the last day, I wasn't worried that I had 300 score left to get, and even on the very last key, I was so sure I was going to get more than 22 score, and maybe would have been done there, or possibly just needed one more key. But when I saw the plus 22, it just became impossible in the time that I had left. In the end, I failed. If you have done the same challenge or attempt one in the future, please share it with me, or tell me your experiences in the comments below.